Hello, welcome back MTG Burgeoning community, welcome back YouTube viewing audience. If you are still part of the latter and wish to join the former, click that subscribe button now. And if you need some convincing, look below in the description to see all of the various reward series this channel has to offer. In today's video, we're continuing our deck building series, Lands Matter with Lord Windgrace. Welcome back MTG Burgeoning fans, here we are, it's Build a Deck Tuesday and we are continuing our series with Lord Windgrace. If you missed our introductory video to this series, you can click on the link below and it'll bring you right up to speed. We have Lord Windgrace. He is a planeswalker that can act as our commander, and we are going to build a Lands Matter deck with Lord Windgrace as our general. So, to kind of start things off real quickly, Lord Windgrace comes into play with 5 loyalty counters. He's 2 into June, which is black, red, and green, and we can +2 him to discard a card and then draw a card. And if we discard a land card, we draw an additional card. We can -3 him and return up to 2 target land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield. We can -11 for his ultimate Big Bang ability to destroy up to 6 target non-land permanents, and then create 6 2/2 green Cat Warrior creature tokens with Forest Walk. And of course, Lord Windgrace can be our commander, and he is the selected general for this particular series of deck building. So in last week's video, very quickly, these were the first 12 cards added. Lotus Cobra, Scute Swarm, Morog, Fury of Akum, Valakut Exploration, I guess he just couldn't wait to have his name called right, Omnath Locus of Rage, the Rampaging Baloths, Tireless Tracker, Avenger of Zendikar, Scapeshift, Crucible of Worlds, Life from the Loam, Ancient Green Warden. So these were the first 12 cards added to this build, and they definitely represent a very landfall-centric theme. Getting some things into play that are great landfall triggers, getting multiple lands into play from places like our graveyard with Crucible Worlds, Scapeshift, lots of ways in which to get lands into play, and that is where we left off in the last video. And in today's video, we are going to showcase 12 cards that help us get lands onto the battlefield from everywhere. We want to cast spells, and we want to get lands onto the battlefield in high volume, and we want to use our hands, our library, our graveyard, the battlefield. So let's start with this beauty from Commander Legends, Reshape the Earth. 6 and triple green, and it's a sorcery. We search our library for up to 10 land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Okay, there's a lot to digest with this. Let's start with the text. Let's notice the text there. It says 10 land cards. It does not say 10 basic land cards. Any 10 lands. Let that sink in for a moment. Any 10 lands. Can you imagine the different possibilities Reshape the Earth has in a deck that cares about lands, such as this Juned Lands Mattered Lord Windgrace EDH commander build? Unbelievable. And something that isn't getting enough attention is the fact that, yes, this is a CMC of 9, but we benefit by getting 10 lands into play. I spent a great deal of time researching the annals of Magic's history with respect to land fetching abilities like Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Sky Shroud Claim, Rampant Growth, Animist's Awakening, all kinds of spells that can get lands from our library into play. None of them produce more lands per CMC cost than Reshape the Earth. Example, Cultivate CMC is 3, similar to Kodama's Reach because they're the exact same spell. You invest 3 CMC into it, you invest 3 mana, you net 2 lands. Realms Uncharted, you invest 4 mana, you net 2 lands into your hand. Sky Shroud Claim, you invest 4 mana, you net 2 lands into your hand. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. You with Sky Shroud Claim, you invest the 4 mana, you net 2 lands onto the battlefield. So we're spending more mana than we're getting lands back. With Reshape the Earth, we're spending 9 and we're getting 10. And what if 3 of those 10 were the Urza's lands? What if the 4th one was Temple of the False God? What if the 5th one was Ancient Tomb? What if we threw Vesuva in there? What if we put Thespian Stage or Dark Depths? Ridiculous. Reshape the Earth is a ridiculously powerful card, and this card is only going to gain more value, and then I am more than happy to include that in this deck. Absolutely. All right, number 2, we have a sneaky good sorcery from Zendikar Rising. Nahiri's Lithoforming. X and double red, we sacrifice X lands. Now, before we start panicking because we're sacrificing lands, remember, we have many, many ways to bring lands from our graveyard back to the battlefield or back to our hand. So putting these lands into the graveyard really only acts as an additional outlet for us to trigger our landfall abilities by playing them from the graveyard or returning them from the graveyard to our hand to play. So let's not freak out about sacrificing X lands. For each land sacrificed this way, we draw a card. And we also may play X additional lands this turn, and lands we control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. That last part is inconsequential to us because it's the lands coming into play that we care about most, triggering our landfall abilities. Nahiri's Lithoforming does so much work. We get lands into the graveyard, which we already established works as an additional outlet to play lands. Crucible of Worlds being one of the spells, Splendid Reclamation being another, Ravnica Excavator. We get to draw cards, which gives more lands into our hand that we can play. And then we have X additional land drops this turn. Nahiri's Lithoforming is going to do a great deal of heavy lifting in this deck. Foreshadowing, as we talked about with Crucible of Worlds. Here's Splendid Reclamation. 3 and a green, return all land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is just a way to get lands from our graveyard into play, triggering all of our landfall abilities. Also, here's another one of those cards that we were talking about before. I messed up on the CMC of the spell. I thought it was a CMC of 4. I am mistaken. It's a CMC of 3, but we still only net 2 lands into our hand. And that's Realms Uncharted. 2 and a green instant, we search our library for 4 land cards with different names and reveal them. Picking 4 different lands with different names is not going to be a problem in this deck because we're going to have more lands in this deck on average than most other EDH commander decks built on this channel because landfall is so important, because lands are going to matter to Lord Windgrace that much. An opponent chooses 2 of these 4 lands. We put the chosen cards into our graveyard and the rest into our hand. Again, we're getting 2 lands into our hand for land drops. We're getting 2 lands into our graveyard as an additional outlet. So this does, in some ways, nets us 4 total lands. It's not as powerful as Reshape the Earth, but Realms Uncharted is an instant and really could help by putting some lands into our hand and lands into the graveyard. If we have a landfall ability, it would be nearly criminally neglectful to not include Azusa, Lost But Seeking. This human monk may be lost, but she's found a home in Lord Windgrace's Juned Lands Matter deck. She's 1/2. She lets us play 2 additional lands on each of our turns. She is a lightning rod of attention and a removal magnet. So let's make sure that we're able to have some lands to play shortly after casting Azusa, Lost But Seeking. All right, and we're hitting the halfway point here with our next creature. And we are going to Shadows over Innistrad for this beauty. And that's going to be the Gitrog monster. 3 black and a green. It's a 6/6 Death Touch. Legendary Frog Horror. Now let's tap the brakes here just to let everybody Just to let everyone know, this is not the Gitrog Monsters CDH commander deck. We are not going to be going through infinite abilities onto the stack in order to cast Exsanguinate with deck more salvage. No, we're not doing any of those things. I'm not saying that those cards may not be included, but that is not going to be the primary focus of this Land Matters deck. The Gitrog monster is included in this build because it's just so versatile and offers us so many different things to do. At the beginning of our upkeep, we sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless we sacrifice a land. And as we established earlier in this video, getting lands into our graveyard is awesome because it gives us another outlet to play lands. We may play an additional land on each of our turns, and whenever whenever one or more land cards are put into our graveyard from anywhere, we draw a card. So if we discard a land, we draw a card. If we sacrifice a land, we draw a card. If we cast Realms Uncharted and 2 lands hit our yard, we draw a card. So the Gitrog monster does a lot of work for us, and including him, it, this, that, she, including it in our deck, is going to do a lot of great things for us. And plus a 6/6 Death Toucher is nothing to turn our noses up at, folks. All right, next spell, number 7. We've got Exploration, the original. 1 green. This enchantment lets us play an additional land each turn. Not much more to talk about there. Next up on the list, we have Wayward Swordtooth. 2 and a green. This 5/5 dinosaur has the Ascend mechanic, which means if we control 10 or more permanents, we have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. We will have 10 or more permanents. We may play an additional land on each of our turns. We just can't attack or block with Wayward Swordtooth unless we have the City's Blessing. Still, I'm willing to risk having a 5/5 can attack, can block sitting out there waiting to get the City's Blessing if needed, as long as we can play an additional land on each turn. That's why Wayward Swordtooth has been included in this deck. All right, rounding out the bottom 4, we have Mina and Den Wildborn. 2 red and a green. It's a 4/4 legendary elf ally. We may play an additional land on each of our turns. Noticing a trend here, yes? We can tap a red and a green and return a land we control to its owner's hand. And if we do, target creature gains trample until end of turn. Enabling trample is nice. However, it's the returning the land to our hand that makes that second ability that much better. Because if we don't have an available land to play from anywhere, we can tap red and a green, bring a land to our hand, put it into play, trigger some landfall abilities. Mina and Den, they're going to be working hard. Going back to the Well of Foreshadowing from earlier in this video, there he is, our slithering Crucible of Worlds Ramunap Excavator. 2 and a green, a 2/3 Naga Cleric. We may play land cards from our graveyard. This is our slithering Crucible of Worlds. It's another outlet for us to play those lands from our graveyard right into play. And that is number 11. I'm sorry, that is number 10. We got 2 left. Number 11 of this subsection of cards, subseries, something, some kind of sub, right, is Burgeoning, the channel's namesake. The plants said, "We will fight with stone, with root and stem and seed. We are patient, we will win." That is the mantra of this channel. We're just going to grind it down, baby. We are just going to grind it down. Whenever an opponent plays a land, we may choose a land from our hand and put it into play. So Burgeoning on the battlefield gives us the potential of playing 3, 4, or maybe 5 additional lands each round of turns. Boy, that's a lot of landfall. Oh, that's a lot of landfall triggers, isn't it? All right, card number 12. Sword of the Animist, with some of the best artwork ever. This equipment is a legendary artifact. 2 to cast, 2 to equip, and whenever an equipped creature attacks, we may search our library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle our library. So anytime one of our creatures attack that's equipped with Sword of the Animist, we are rampant growthing a basic right into play. And that is all for Sword of the Animist. And that is it, folks. Those are the next 12 cards to be added to this Lord Windgrace Lands Matter deck. Next up, let's continue with this theme. We want spells that are going to get lands onto the battlefield from everywhere, from our library, from our hand, from our graveyard. Let's continue with this theme to make sure we have enough spells to take full advantage of every landfall trigger that we possibly can imagine. This is MTG Burgeoning, folks. You are here for Build the Deck Tuesday. See you next week.